peace, and long life. So I finally got around to sitting down and watching the Ultra HD Director's Cut restoration of Star Trek: The Motion Picture. It was extraordinarily underwhelming, to say the least. Incredible and award-winning in its special effects, especially for that era, the late 1970s, Star Trek: The Motion Picture. There's a lot of people that didn't like the story or the way that it unfolded, or particularly how Captain Kirk and his relationship with Spock and McCoy, the way that that was presented, that felt very different from the show, very different from what we would get after. That often people will say Star Trek: The Motion Picture was a great movie, but it didn't feel like Star Trek. And in that formula around those men's interaction and friendships, yeah, absolutely, that part of it didn't feel consistent. Obviously, the idea of exploring strange new worlds, encountering an alien life form, every science fiction aspect of that movie is absolutely right on the money Star Trek. So being a lifelong Trekker, at least I hesitate to say that now that I've boycotted it, beginning about a year ago because Kurtzman, there is no Star Trek for me after Star Trek Enterprise. It just doesn't exist unless something drastic happens and that universe is erased. I am strictly a classic Trekker. So now I don't know, am I allowed to call myself a Trekker? I got rid of all the merchandise, everything, the mementos. Nevertheless, having grown up with the original Star Trek, the real Star Trek, I don't know how many times I watched Star Trek: The Motion Picture, know the dialogue, know the story, know I could recite it normally. Watching the Ultra HD Director's Cut version, I was really hoping there'd be some really different things about it. Often this happens. Rocky IV did this a while back where there's like a whole alternate version of it out there, which is super cool to go watch and be able to re-experience it for the 1000th time, but in a slightly different way. And you're like, this is neat. Anything they could add on. You took a film, Star Trek: The Motion Picture, which was absolutely visually stunning, special effects well ahead of its time as far as expectations of the audience. And now it's in Ultra HD, and it's cool, it's clearer, it's wider, it's okay. I mean, it's still Star Trek: The Motion Picture. Very little about it was changed except the visuals, which I was hoping when you throw in Director's Cut, you would get. In fact, the only things that I noticed, and I noticed them because I could recite the movie from memory, there were some scenes of dialogue, particularly where McCoy and Kirk, after Kirk has confronted Decker about countermanding his phaser order and switching to torpedoes, the entire exchange still happens, but it felt like McCoy, and I didn't go back to double check this, McCoy's delivery of his assessment of Kirk using the emergency to get the Enterprise back was a lot more nonchalant. He was making an observation, which he then drives home. The version of it I remember, he was a lot more accusative and sort of hostile in his tone throughout that conversation. Now, obviously, they did not go back and do reshoots. DeForest Kelley has passed on, and these guys wouldn't be doing that at this age. So they must have had alternate footage. There must have been multiple cuts of this, and there were still outtakes of the version the director maybe liked. And I did like it better. I felt like it played more to the traditional relationship of the Kirk, Spock, McCoy dynamic for it to be that way. And we also got it in a slightly different order because in that conversation, we pan back and forth. There's a call from the bridge. And I noticed that it happened in a different order and it felt better. There were a couple other ones that I wasn't really sure of without comparing side by side, but there was no drastic addition or removal of footage from what I could tell. The primary difference with this updated version is that it looks wider, it looks way clearer, and it's really cool or visually even more than it always was. But it really didn't stand out as something that, it was nice that they did it, but it was sort of surprising that they made such a big deal about the re-release and the the new version, and maybe they were trying to get enough interest to get the money back that it cost them to make the edits. I don't know. But it was not drastically different. So it remains Star Trek the Motion Picture with its great qualities, with its mediocre qualities. All of that is there. It's always worth seeing. And if you feel like seeing it again, see the new version because it's wider and it's clearer and it's cool. But if you've seen it 1,000 times and you're not in the mood specifically to go rewatch it, there's not enough of anything new here to compel you to go see it. But it is still Star Trek the Motion Picture, visually stunning, great film. Check it out if you're so inclined. Peace and long life.